These are the keys to shaping and e-filing. Okay, so we have our nail. We just applied our application, and now it's time to shape it. I am using a long coffin nail, but this application tutorial goes for all nail types. I am using the pen to demonstrate the direction you should be moving your file when shaping the nail. The goal when shaping and filing the acrylic nail is to make it look seamless to the natural nail. So on the left side, I like the acrylic to be filed down towards the left, and on the right, I like it to be filed down towards the right so that all acrylic will be flush to the nail plate. Okay, so starting off, I'm using 80 grit nail files. You have to season your nail files, and what that means is basically file the nail file. These edges that I was just rubbing, they're very sharp and they can cut your client. So take your nail file and rub them along the sides of each nail. You want to make sure you're hitting all 4 edges so that you don't hurt your client at all, because during the filing process, you'll probably be doing a lot of flipping and turning. You won't know what side you're on. But to make sure, you want to make sure you just file everything completely. And I file it until it is smooth to the touch. I run my fingers along it and make sure it does not cut me, because that way I know it won't cut my client. I got these 80 grit nail files from Amazon. Okay, so beginning to file the nail, first thing I like to do, look at my nail, see where it needs to be filed, see where it needs to be shaped. I always go up under the sides of the nail first, and I do this, pull the skin back, and then place your file up under the nail. I do the same on the other side. Pull the skin back and file up under the nail until the nail is completely straight and smooth. Next, you're going to go parallel with the nail, and this is for any shape that you do, square, coffin, stiletto, whichever. Do this firmly so that you can make sure you have a nice sharp shape. If you made the nail thicker than what I did, you will have to do that part a little bit longer. So then I go in and I file the free edge and make it nice and crisp. I also touch up this part at the end for good measure, but now we have our shape of the nail. So for longer nails, I like to go in and hand file first. I like to go in and tackle the middle of the nail first. When I do this, I file to the thickness that I want the nail, so that way when I'm filing everything else, I can match it to it. I have the file parallel to the nail and I'm applying pressure. Like I said, I want to make the thickness to where I want it, and I file it evenly throughout the whole entire nail. And while I file, I continuously use my thumb to feel the nail to check for lumps, bumps, and make sure the nail is as smooth as I want it to be. Once I have the middle even to my liking, I go in and I do the sides of the nail. Just like the arrows show, I am using a downward motion when filing the sides of the nail. The goal is to round the nail out and make it look as natural as possible. Don't file too much because you don't want to overfile, and make sure to stop and look at the nail in between every couple of files. I do the same thing on the right side and file in a downward motion because, like I said, I want the nail to be natural and curve around the middle of the nail, just like this. If we do not round the nail out like so, the nail will end up being boxy, and that is not our goal. Okay, so now we filed the tip of the nail, and we're going to go in and file the apex. Be very careful on this part. Pull the skin back on the sides, pull the skin back on the bottom. So when I'm doing the side, as you see, I'm pulling the skin back and making sure it's flush to the cuticle. There's no acrylic on the skin, and the acrylic goes straight into the nail bed, and it looks very natural. I'm doing the same thing on the other side. Make sure you are pulling the skin back when you do this, because you can easily cut your client, especially using fast motions close to the skin. The apex usually doesn't need as much filing, but if it does, go ahead and file a little bit more. But we are going to go back in with our E-file because we can get closer to the skin. Make sure to feel your nail for lumps and bumps. Check it from all angles. It's looking nice and smooth to me. And I know when I get close to the cuticle, I am going to be using my E-file because that's what helps me the best to make sure my cuticle is really flush to the nail bed. That is what we call sealing the cuticles. Sealing the cuticle is one of the important steps of making sure the nail does not lift. Okay, so we have our Pana 5-in-1 nail bed. I love this nail bed. It helps with debulking the nail as well as sealing the cuticle. Okay, so now I'm going to work my way from one side wall to the other. In a way, I'm basically going around and carving out the nail. And I really like this bit because it's not as dangerous. I'm just doing it very lightly. And if I need to go back, I'll go back. But I'm not applying a lot of pressure. So basically carving out the nail all the way around the skin. Because around the skin is where it's going to be the thinnest. Don't completely thin it out, but it is going to be thinner than any other part of the nail. This is what gives it that flush look and also seals the nail to prevent lifting. Pull the sidewalls back when you do this. When I go in the middle, I pull it up top, and when I go on the other side, I pull it back. Just like I filed it with my hand file, I go back over it with my E-file to completely smooth it out and get rid of the scratches. When you go underneath the nail, you can build the curve as deep as you want. I didn't want to thin out the nails, so I didn't do too much, but I gave it a slight curve because I don't want it flat. So now I'm taking a step back and looking at the nail and seeing what needs to be done. It looks a little boxy right here, so I just take the file and I go over the parts that I want to curve and be more seamless to the nail. If your nail is boxy, whenever you're applying gel polish, it will show. Okay, so when I'm also carving out the nail, I like to turn my bit at an angle so that way the acrylic right around the cuticle is at an angle. I'm not flattening it, but I'm flushing it to the nail bed. When I go over the whole entire nail, I like to use gliding motions. And if your nail glides smoothly, it's usually because there's no lumps or bumps. Continue to use your thumb to make sure to feel for any lumps or bumps as you're filing and just making sure everything is completely smooth. When you're going over the apex, you do not need it super thick, contrary to belief. Because this is the longer nail, you do need the apex thicker than shorter nails, but it does not need to be a huge lump. And as I go around the cuticle, my goal is to make it not a huge lump, but to make it look natural, but it's thick. So here we have a nice structure of the nail, and it's not super thick or it's not super humpy. So I go at an angle again because I want to even out the cuticle area to the apex so we can create a nice arch. See how I'm turning the bit? Just like that. Because the rest of the structure of the nail is already good, and we just want everything else to fall in line. Here we go. So now it looks like it's coming out of the nail, and that is the goal that we are going for. When we file the nail, this is how we want it to end. And like you see me do, I'm checking the nail from all different angles, feeling the nail, making sure it's smooth, checking the sidewalls, making sure they're fully flush, making sure no acrylic is on the skin. These are things you need to check for. And if you see anything, just go back in and fix it. There's no problem. Now, the bit I used, it was fine. So it had the nail very smooth, no scratches. But I do go in with my buff to make it 100% smooth. When you buff, it will reveal any problems that the nail may have if it's not smooth. So don't be shy. Go in and fix that before continuing on in your process. After I buff, I go ahead and wipe the nail off with a lint-free wipe Before I send my client to wash their hands in the bathroom, I like to remove the debris from around their cuticle just in case they can't do it themselves. And yeah, they were too thick, perfectly smooth, and ready for nail art or top coat, whichever one you choose. Check the sidewalls, making sure everything looks good, and it looks good, and I feel confident in this nail. So now you can move on.